is up, and welcome to the latest edition of the Bruin Bible. Will Decker and the Madman in the house here. We got a very special guest. Football season is approaching. Why not bring the number one source for all things Bruins here from the LA Times? You guys got to subscribe to his new newsletter coming out, UCLA Unlocked. Mr. Ben Bolch in the house. Ben, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to connect with us. How is everything going out at fall camp in Costa Mesa?
Well, with an intro like that, maybe I'll come back on every day. You guys do this.
You're most welcome to, Ben. You're most welcome.
That was fantastic. Fall camp has been it's been different. You know, it's interesting. This is my 10th year, consecutive year covering UCLA, and the very first year was out in San Bernardino, and that was back in 2016, and then every year since then has been on campus until this year down in Costa Mesa. So it's about 40 degrees, I'd say, cooler than San Bernardino, roughly. But it's been a beautiful setting down there. They're down there where the Chargers have practiced in the past. Only gotten, some glimpses of really what's going on. They've kind of limited the viewing periods, but I've made a couple of takeaways in that short time frame.
Oh, man. Well, we're so excited to talk to you. We've got a litany of questions. I'm going to start it off with this. Tino Sinceri coming over from Indiana has been a huge talking point amongst the fan base, amongst Jamal and myself on this podcast. And I've read some of your articles kind of detailing just how far him and DeShaun go back. Your early April article talking about how Tino was around the Carolina Panthers when DeShaun was a player there, to a whole circle moment of him now being the offensive coordinator for a guy like DeShaun in his second year at UCLA. What have you seen from Tino in the early parts of the spring and fall sessions that make you feel confident he could get this offense back on track for UCLA that suffered so badly the prior year?
Well, I would say, the number one takeaway is just the success he's had in first years with quarterbacks. It's gone back, I detailed this in a recent story. It's like 4 years in a row. Maybe I'm missing somebody. It's 5, but I think at least 4 years in a row, he's had a quarterback he's been working with the first time, and they've had, conference championships, bowl games, last year, historic season at Indiana. So he's really found the magic touch, and, some glimpses of what that I think looks like that we've seen are things like being very hands-on. As I mentioned, the viewing window hasn't been very long, but I did notice on one of the Chasing Saturdays videos that UCLA's put out, they had a nice clip that showed him kind of rolling out and firing a pass downfield and kind of showing what he wanted from the quarterback. So it's things like that, he's not above teaching the most basic things, and he has a great chemistry and rapport with these guys, very personable person. He's got the Italian connection going that I think everybody loves to have fun with. So just kind of like and he's very bright and he's very articulate. So he's got a lot of things going for him. And I think, they're really looking to maximize that and bringing in Nico Iamaleava to be the quarterback with Tino Sinceri. That's a dynamic combination.
Dynamic combination indeed, Ben. And I know we'll go into Nico here in just a second, but as you're well aware, better than anyone, this Big Ten conference is really built from the inside out. And so I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on what you've seen over the course of spring and fall and who you believe are going to be kind of the first 5 with that offensive line and that first 4 with that defensive line, and how this starting unit of the trenches is going to look and how you feel about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. As I wrote that just posted this morning, it looks like there's been a shakeup with the offensive line. It appears that Sam Yoon might have been overtaken, which was kind of a big surprise to me. It appears that Oluwafanto Akinshilo, at least over the last week or so, has been taking all the first team reps during the short periods we've been in there, at center. And I asked Coach Foster about it, I believe it was yesterday, and was saying, giving him the option of saying, hey, is this just mixing and matching? And he basically I felt without saying it, said that Olafonso has kind of overtaken that position. Talked about how he had, started taking snaps center in spring and has really carried that over to fall camp and has done an amazing job. So, it looks like he's going to be the center, but the nice thing is, you've got a proven backup at Yoon, or you could even platoon those guys, in basically a 50-50 situation. So that looks very promising. And then, at left tackle, it looks like Cortland Ford definitely has taken over that spot. He did early in spring and hasn't let up except for a small injury pocket there where he missed a couple of days or two, but appears to be back full strength. The guards looks like it's going to be some transfers there. It looks like Eugene Brooks, I believe, I always get left and right confused, but I believe it's left guard Eugene Brooks transfer
Oklahoma.
from Oklahoma. One of the many players on UCLA's roster who came in with big pedigree, but hasn't really broken through in the way they want to, and he's somebody who I think can do that. Then on the other side, you've got Julian Armella, the transfer from Florida State, who similar situation, big pedigree, looking for that breakthrough. They've liked him since day one. He looks to be good. And then we've got the veteran Garrett DeGiorgio at right tackle. He's kind of moved around a bit, but knowing that he's back and is in that spot and could solidify it, I think is really promising for UCLA. So I think their top 5 offensive linemen are pretty much set, and they're in a good spot. And I think that they're, probably going to get off to a better start than they did last year. I mean, that Hawaii game was a little bit of a mess with the new guys in there, and we all saw some struggles there. So I think that's very promising. Defensive line wise, it's the return of Gary Smith and Keanu Williams in the middle. And then it's going to be a hunt for some quality edge rushers. I think Devin Apu is probably going to be. I believe he's got the leading production of tackles for loss and sacks. I think he had 4.5 and 1.5 respectively, most among any of the returners on this defense. And then you got guys like Jacob Busick and some others, Nico Iamaleava, Cole Cogshell, vying to get playing time in those roles, but it's kind of wide open. I think we'll see some guys they'll start with the season, and then we'll see how it goes, and then maybe make some adjustments if they're needed.
When you think about DeShaun Foster, for people that have followed the UCLA program since his tenures here, he was one of the best running backs coaches with all in college football. Whether it was developing Zach Charbonnet into the high draft pick he was, or Joshua Kelly, Britton Brown, Demetric Felton, running backs like this. What have you been hearing about the new Cal transfer, Jet Thomas, coming into the program? We've heard about some explosive plays at practice. What is the coaching staff feeling about Javian Thomas in the backfield right now?
Yeah, I mean, DeShaun Foster's called him a home run threat. His nickname's the Jet. I've seen the highlights. He's the real deal. People love Jade Knott, and with good reason, but some people think that he's even better, and his stats were last year. In fact, I had to do a double take when DeShaun Foster said that, because I guess I wasn't paying close enough attention, but it is true. He had better stats last year. So I think he really could be a breakthrough player, and, could come close to, 1,000-yard type season. And the only thing that I think would hold him back is the depth of the room. I mean, you've got some other quality guys. I really like what I've seen out of Anthony Woods, Utah transfer, who didn't play last year, recovering from injury, but was dynamic when he was at Idaho. He's really stood out to me. Jalen Berger, I think, is a very solid option as well. I know Coach Foster is very high on him. And then you've got Anthony Frias. And let's not forget about Carson Cox, one of the highest rated running backs in California preps just, a year or so ago. So there's a lot of quality depth there. And I think that the running game, with Coach Sunseri, who has said, he's a Nick Saban disciple, he's going to have to establish the run game. We're going to see a lot of running, but I do think this offense is going to be balanced and dynamic. So I think that there's not going to be one facet that's going to be kind of neglected.
Ben, we can't go too far without asking a Nico Iamaleava question. I think you should be proud of us that we waited until question 4 for Nico. But just, your impressions, obviously, it's been well documented how he came to UCLA. It's sort of put a spotlight nationally, I think, on UCLA that this program hasn't had in a number of years. What have you seen from Nico with your special lens about his abilities, particularly on the field, his connection with his teammates off the field? What have you seen, and what is a genuine expectation of his performance this year?
Oh, I think the expectation is for him to be a superstar. I really do. And from what I've seen, I think he can live up to his end of that bargain. I mean, I keep talking about limited viewing, but I basically had to write a paragraph about 3 different passes because those were like the only 3 passes I saw the other day. And I had to write a paragraph about each one because our viewing's so limited, but it just really showed that he has so much talent. I mean, I haven't seen a quarterback with as strong of an arm, I think, since Josh Rosen. He might be, the best run. I mean, Dorian Thompson-Robinson was a really dynamic runner, but I think Nico is as well. And I think the thing that stands out to me so far is his decision-making, knowing when to run, when to pass, pockets to throw it into that will not be picked off. He seems to check all the boxes. He's got a presence about him. He's 6'6". He just looks like the guy. I mean, he really meets all the metrics that you want out of that position. I will say some combinations I've seen that have been great so far. Quasi Gilmer seems to have a really good rapport with him, as one might expect, because he's a dynamic receiver. And then I saw Hudson Habermill make a heck of a play in the corner of the end zone. I believe it was yesterday or the day before, just a leaping touchdown grab that was in traffic and very impressive. So I think he'll spread it around, but I do look for Quasi Gilmer to be the kind of go-to guy among the receiving core.
Yeah. Year 1 from year 2, you've been around DeShaun more than just about anybody following UCLA. What have been some of the growth you've seen from him? Because the jump he made from a running backs coach to a Division I head coach is a very unprecedented jump amongst college football. Talk to me about what you've seen from DeShaun. We saw the leap at year 2 at Media Day. He looked a lot more comfortable up at the podium, making statements. What have you seen from our guy DeShaun? Because we're very optimistic going into year 2.
Yeah, he just seems to really have kind of grown on the job and grown into the role. I mean, I've seen, last year after the Hawaii game, he was asking, hey, do I need to make some opening comments? I mean, he kind of did, really didn't know what he was supposed to do. And he's gotten all that kind of procedural stuff out of the way. And now he's just kind of like rolling with everything. So I think it's taken a lot of pressure off of him and, kind of lifted that burden of like, hey, I've never done this before. What do I need to do in this situation? Now he doesn't have that kind of hanging over him. So I've seen him be, a lot more kind of just relaxed and in the flow of everything. And it's been, if you're a UCLA fan, I think that's exactly what you want to see.
No question about it, Ben. That's a sight for sore eyes indeed. Ben, let's talk a bit about the secondary. And obviously it felt like in the last week or so, Key Lawrence had sort of separated a bit, in terms of production on the field, leadership in the locker room, off the field, and then he got injured. Can you sort of comment on any insights with Key Lawrence's injury and also just the secondary holistically? Who are some guys that have caught your eye, and who do you think is going to kind of make an impact in that room?
Yeah, that's one of the, the defense is basically turning over the secondary 100%. So, you see some guys out there in our limited period, and it's a little bit kind of hard to make much out of it, and especially when they're doing the mixing and matching. But, I think Key Lawrence was a guy that everybody's talked about as somebody who's going to kind of anchor things back there. He's got a lot of experience, a lot of talent. He's very fast. He always seems to be around the ball. So, he's one of the guys. Another guy I think is going to be important is Cole Martin, the son of Demetrius Martin, who, people who've been around the program know from being on staff under Jim Moore. He's back now. In fact, I'm kind of selfishly hoping he does well just so I can write that father-son feature, right? Because that's always a fun one. Kanye Clark is back and looking very good as well. I'm going down the list here. I think Robert Stafford III is probably going to definitely be in the mix to make a big contribution. I don't want to forget anybody. Jameer Benjamin has made a couple nice pass breakups that I've seen in the limited viewing windows. Um, uh, let's see. I'm just going down the list here to make sure I don't forget anybody. Croy Stewart. Yeah, he's definitely going to be in there, probably starting. So those are probably the top 5 or 6 guys. I know I'm probably forgetting somebody. Scooter Jackson. When Key Lawrence went down, Scooter Jackson plugged into that spot. So, DeShaun Foster said that Key Lawrence will be back soon, but if not, Scooter Jackson looks to be in there, and he probably will be anyway, depth-wise, be playing for sure. So there's a lot of new guys to learn, a lot of talent, a lot of guys coming in and feel like they have something to prove. So, it'll be really interesting that first week or two to see kind of how the depth plays out there.
What have been your impressions of Coach Quan on the offensive line? Because last year, the offense just could not get going. A large portion of that was their run game and how they attacked from there. The offensive line, they got a lot of new transfers in, as we talked about earlier, but we heard some comments for Coach Quan where some of the top recruits we've gotten in the next class committed because of Coach Quan and, his impression that he made on some of these young kids. What have you seen from Coach Quan, and how do you think he can develop his offensive line to potentially get them to the next level?
Yeah, he's one of the assistants I'm most eager to talk with. I put in a request for him. I haven't had the fortune of speaking with him yet, but from everything I've been told and observed, very impressive young assistant. One of the big up-and-comers, I think, in college football. He seems to really be a no-nonsense kind of guy. I saw him even before the spring showcase at the Rose Bowl. I heard him with some pretty pointed words that I was surprised to hear, before what was basically an exhibition that doesn't really mean anything. But I think what impressed me was that he wasn't messing around, right? He wanted to get it right. Still with, basically 4 months to the season opener, he wasn't going to let them slack off. So I really like that. I really like the fact that he's not saying oh, I got, Sam Ewan's going to be my starter no matter what. If somebody's, has the talent to overtake him, he's going to look at that guy. And I think that's what you want out of your coach. And then, as you alluded to in recruiting, 2 of the top players in their current class of 2026 are 4-star linemen from Florida. Now they're going to have to fend off some late challenges from schools back east to hold on to them. But just the fact that they got commitments from these guys is a great sign that he really is able to connect with the young kids and, get the kind of players that, let's be honest, UCLA hasn't gotten in a big manner since Jim Mora was the coach. So all those things point to him being, maybe one of the best gets of DeShaun Foster in the offseason when he overhauled his coaching staff.
Ben, one of the great sort of mysteries of the season, and there are many of them, but one of the X factors that Will and I have talked about a lot is John Vaughns. And this is sort of the first year in a while now where he's put down the bat and the glove and the cleats, committing full-time to football. Will and I have sort of talked about it over the months and the years that the best version of John Vaughns is sort of a hybrid linebacker safety a la Derwin James, someone that you can sort of move all over the field and really sort of a queen piece on the defensive chessboard. What have you seen from John here? And do you think there's an opportunity for him to make an outsized impact this season?
Yeah, well, for my newsletter coming up this week, I listed the 10 Bruins who have to step up if they're going to have the season they want. And I think I put him number 1 on the defense because, he's going to be literally in the middle of everything at linebacker. He can play, multiple positions, as you alluded to, but he looks, just talking to him, observing him, I think he said he put on, I can't remember, it was like 10 pounds of muscle and lost 10 pounds of fat, but he just looks a lot sturdier to me. He looks like a real, physical specimen, a guy who can plug the middle, so I think that's important. I think I was looking at his stats. I mean, his biggest impact, I think, came late in the 2022 season. I think he started a bunch of games in a row and made an impact, but he really needs to kind of, not to put too much pressure on the guy, but he really needs to kind of become one of the top 2 or 3 playmakers on this defense, really running all over the place and kind of taking on that Carson Schlesinger role of having a nose for the ball and being there to make the tackle. So he's got a lot on his plate, but he's a veteran and he's been around. And now that he's dedicated this basically full year to football, I think he can do it. So that could be a real bright spot for this defense.
Ben, you have been such an awesome guest. Madman and I have had the best time. We're going to get one more question in for you. We want to know what you think the ceiling of this UCLA football team can be. We've kind of predicted 7 to 8 wins would be the ceiling in the regular season, maybe a bowl win attached to that. When you have a quarterback of Nico Iamaleava's ilk, you have a shot in all of these ball games because an elite quarterback covers up a lot of holes in different areas. What do you think the ceiling is for this UCLA football team, Ben, before we get you out of here?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I don't want to scoop myself because I'm picking game by game next week for next week, not this week's newsletter, but next week's newsletter. So stay tuned for that. But I agree. I think the ceiling is elite. I think I'm already saying that Nico Iamaleava is a given as a star player. I'm locking him in as being that. My 2 questions that will determine UCLA's fate this season are, one, how much better is this offensive line than last year? Because last year it really struggled and there were some injuries and there were guys moving in and out of the lineup. So there are reasons for that. But can they pave the way for the running game and protect Nico? And if that happens, that's a huge plus. Then the other flip side is, obviously you got to get a pass rush on defense. Can they? I believe they got 22 sacks last year, which I think tied for 78th in the country, which is frankly not enough. And they really need to improve on that. So we're going to have some guys emerge that really haven't done it yet. I mean, that's one of the stories of all these transfers, as I kind of referenced earlier. A lot of guys with kind of 4-star pedigrees who have, been decent players, but not stars. UCLA needs a handful of those guys on defense to really break through and be, all conference level type players. They're going to need, a couple of those guys, particularly at edge rush and at linebacker. So that's, to me, if those 2 things fall into place, I mean, you really are looking at a 9 to 10 win type season possible. I mean, there'll be the only 2 games I don't think they really have a chance in are Penn State at home and then Ohio State on the road. I think everything else, you could make a case, you could convince yourself that they could win those games. And, college football is crazy. Maybe they'll pull an upset and make me look ridiculous. But I just think, on paper right now, as we sit and knowing the histories of those programs, you're probably penciling those in as losses. But I think everything else, totally up for grabs for this team.
Well, Ben, we had an absolute blast. Thank you so much for coming. Guys, make sure to read him on the LA Times. Make sure to subscribe to the newsletter, UCLA Unlocked, that he has for free out for UCLA fans. Ben Bolch in the house. Thank you so much, buddy, for coming on.
All right, gentlemen. Thank you.